Welcome to this special feature of Personal Development Mastery Podcast. The special audio feature is about Gaianet, a global community connecting heart-centered, purpose-driven changemakers whose mission is to work together towards a harmonized world. In their own words, to grow the roots of a new earth. This is the second part of the feature. In the previous part, we've heard from the co-founders and core contributors of Gaianet, answering two essential questions I've asked them. What is Gaianet and who is Gaianet for? And they also shared their views on the current global situation. In this second part of the feature, I will again let my guests' voices tell the story of Gaianet, and I will be your narrator, sharing my own perspective when I feel that it's needed. In this episode, we're going to dive deeper into the people themselves, and you will hear them talk about their background, key defining moments, their spiritual journey, and their calling to start Gaianet. So let's start with getting some background for each of them so we can begin to understand them better. And the first one we will listen from is Dan Horter, co-founder and vision keeper of Gaianet. Dan has an interesting story. He said he was feeling like the black sheep of the family because he was always asking the deeper questions, the questions about meaning.
I felt like the black sheep of the family, and I felt like the odd fish in my friend groups and my environments, generally speaking, social environments. And why was that? That was because I asked deeper questions than others did. So I wanted to know the why behind the why, what people are doing or how things work. And it was also I could really resonate with how the world is working. And at that time, I just had a feeling, and I'm talking about my early 20s, mid-20s, when I was studying aerospace engineering. And in this process of who am I to figure this out? And I couldn't really find that much resonance with my peers, also with my friends in the deeper conversations. It was always about why are we here? Who am I? And what am I to do here? And I didn't realize that was about purpose because I was never trained in my family system, nor in my educational system, to go discover who I really am.
Dan told me that one of the milestones in his journey was when he joined for the first time a group of men who wanted to improve their relationship with women. And this led him to learning about the concept of the mastermind, and then it started his personal development journey.
And in that, I met a guy who told me about the concept of the mastermind, of the book of Napoleon Hill. And he said, well, bro, we need to start a mastermind group with other men to get together, to set goals and to grow. And it was the first time in my life I meet somebody with a growth mindset, I would say, who really wanted to evolve himself. And starting that journey in my relationship with women opened all of the gates because I wondered who I am. I went to look for, I am a man. If I want to feel strong and confident, I need to know what my purpose is. So that started the quest for purpose. It started the masterminding. It started surrounding myself with people who are wanting to get better at what they're doing.
The next person we will listen from today is Bart Horvech. Bart has a background in high-tech engineering and robotics, and he told me that he got into this field because he wanted to understand how the universe works. So here's Bart sharing his story about this.
I grew up in a small village near Amsterdam. Went to high school in Amsterdam, and after that went to the east of the Netherlands to do my university study in mechanical engineering and later mechatronics. I would say that this study direction came forth from a deep eagerness to understand how the universe works. And first off, this was directed more outwards. understanding, like, how do things work. I'm really intrigued with how do things work. So this quite naturally leads you to start studying something in the technical domain. And mechanical engineering, it's directed on designing stuff that works. So that was a very sensible choice to make. And after my master in robotics, which took it even deeper, so to say, and also my interest in technology and the role that I see for technology in improving our lives.
You might have seen so far some similarities between Dan and Bart, and you will also probably find some similar elements when we hear Floris and Alexander and their stories. But there is someone who has a completely different story. Julia May, one of the original co-founders of Gaianet, has a very interesting and uncommon in many ways nomadic background. Here's her telling her story about how she grew up in a hippie community.
More than half a century ago, I'm born in Italy, and my parents were like this fresh hippies in that time. So in many ways, what you see happening today was happening in that time as well, in kind of a different version, but the energy was quite similar. So when my parents moved back to Belgium, Leuven, because they both were studying at the university still, they started a community, a commune for the children, for us. And so we lived in a big house with a big garden. And besides the fact that there were many families living together and there were a bunch of kids present, they also aimed to give us a very special education. So it was the anti-authoritarian period. So basically that meant that we were completely free to do whatever we wanted to do.
The way Julia was educated made an impression on me, and asked her more questions about this fascinating topic of anti-authoritarian education, as she called it.
What is also remarkable is that the adults in that time somehow managed to really educate us without any frame of religion, of politically colored information. So it was very open. There was also nothing going on around role descriptions, like you are a girl, so you're supposed to be like this or that, these are boys. That was completely open. But also, and that's one of the things that I appreciate the most, is that you were never told like you're good or you're bad. We were never punished. So we were not like put on a pedestal like, oh my God, you're so amazing, or a good girl, nor punished. So that created like an inner space that was very free for just expression. So next to studying and learning, and because I loved that from a very young age on, there was also a lot of play. We were always playing.
The next person we will listen from is Floris Moorkamp, one of the core contributors of Gaianet. Floris described himself as a skeptic shaman that goes on contradictory paths. So here's him sharing some elements of his background.
I'm always walking quite a few different paths in life that seem to contradict each other. And that's something I really like. That's also the term skeptic shaman came from, that's like seemingly contradictory terms. And I just love to kind of go in between those and see what I find. So like after like a year of university, I dropped out to just work basically and start pursuing my career. And that's also when I kind of discovered self-development in a way. So I started to realize I could work on my own. Well, personality is what I thought back then. I really create myself in a way.
One of the co-founders of Gaianet is Alexander Keenan. When I asked him about his defining moments in his journey, he explicitly stated there were 4 of them. And before I let him share these 4 with you, my own thoughts on this is how much someone has pondered and reflected on their journey to be able to pinpoint those 4 milestones and describe them with such clarity. So here's Alexander talking about his defining moments.
I grew up in a small village in the Netherlands, and that was really, fixed mindset village, so to say. Parents, family, neighbors, everyone. Then I was 23, I moved abroad to Prague, Czech Republic, and there via I got in touch with my first self-help book. That was for me a key defining moment. I didn't know that self-help books exist. I didn't know that how-to books exist. Second big one was to quit my corporate job and really start walking my own path. I was really good in corporate life. You know, I was young, I was rising star, I got promotions, I got good performance ratings, people loved me, I had my internal network, all the results. So felt there must be so much more. The third big one was exemplified by the book of Michael Singer, The Surrender Experiment. Wow, that book. that really got me. I read it in 1.5 days straight. Amazing story, the life story of Michael Singer from the 70s until the 2000s, where he decided to just surrender. Fully surrender. And instead of letting the mind define what needs to happen, so initiating all kinds of things, he started to live in response to the universe, waiting what comes his way. And when he gets a sincere request from the heart, he does it because he feels the universe is asking me to serve here. And the rest of the time, he just wanted to meditate. And that completely flipped my mindset upside down. I was always initiating. What's next? What's next? What's next? Pushing forward, moving forward. That's what I learned in so much literature, corporate life, etc. But the surrender experiment explained to me that that's not how this game works. That's not how life is designed. So 1 January 2019, I decided to surrender. Let's play this game. No more thinking, no more worrying, no more unnecessary initiating. Just sink down into the moment. Finally, the 4th big personal development switch happened when I had my first ayahuasca ceremony.
I find Alexander's journey and milestones fascinating. And we will come back to this topic of ayahuasca and plant medicine a little later on. So now that we've heard a bit of the personal journey and background from the people behind Gaianet, to create even more context into the story, let's look at their spiritual journey. I asked Bart Horvech about his spiritual journey, and he gave me a very interesting answer, starting from the Western philosophy that focuses on the mind to the Eastern philosophies where consciousness has the central role. Here's Bart.
I would say it has to do with the wanting to understand life and the truth about life. And this exploration started with looking more at philosophy, especially Western philosophy, which I found quite intriguing. But at some point, I also felt that it was limiting in the sense that it felt a little bit too mental and too abstract. And it didn't help me understand what is my role in all of this. I mean, this is the most central thing that I know, that I experience, the consciousness from which I live. Why is that not being talked about in the more Western philosophies? Or why doesn't it have a more central role? And because I wanted to understand that part, I was more drawn towards Eastern philosophies that actually put consciousness at the center of life, and the rest flows from there.
In terms of spiritual journey, Julia May had a very intense spiritual awakening when she had a near-death experience at the age of 24. Here she is discussing this.
For me, the first moment things started to change is when I was 24, I had a near-death experience. And so I didn't know really what happened to me. And so I started to read about it, about other people's testimonials, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who was an amazing inspiration. And that started to, let's say, reunite my very sensitive, psychic kind of child experience that I had, where I was very close to the spirit world and the animal worlds and the plants and the whole very fairy tale kind of experience that I had as a child.
And here's Alexander Keenan again talking about how he started his spiritual journey.
Spirituality is something that I've been pushing away most of my life, just like the environment I grew up in. So there wasn't much space for that. But as I started with the how-to books when I was 23, so like 13 years ago, and a couple of years in, I started to understand, first of all, how the mind works, limiting beliefs versus empowering beliefs. And secondly, more about how the universe works. And so the evidence was piling up that there is a spiritual side to the thing. There's a material side to this world and a spiritual side. You can be as stubborn as you want, and your mind can completely block off that spiritual side your entire life. But it doesn't make much sense. It's just denying the truth that's there. So underway over those years, I started to open up to the idea that potentially I will be opening up to spirituality at some point. That's how it started slowly.
And that's a very interesting point that Alexander made there, that you can be as stubborn as you want and pushing spirituality away, but it doesn't make any sense to deny it because there is overwhelming evidence that it is there, it exists. And now let's also hear from Dan Horter about how his spiritual journey started.
So I guess that was the start for a journey that just never ended. And that brought me to where I am today. Which in the end, like I studied aerospace, I came in contact with medicine from the Amazon. I drank ayahuasca for the first time. Before that, I had no sense of soul or energy of spirituality. I thought it was all mumbo jumbo. And ayahuasca let me experience my soul, my energetic body. And that was such an awakening for me to a reality beyond the material world. I was studying the material world through mathematics and logic. And this was something else. And that opened an even bigger box of curiosity and brought me on a journey to travel to the Amazon and get into tribe building and get into medicine work with ayahuasca.
During the interviews, I noticed that ayahuasca was mentioned as an important part of the spiritual journey for many of the Gaianet co-founders. So I asked them specifically what role did plant medicine and more specifically ayahuasca play in their spiritual awakening. And here is Bart first.
I don't know in what way it has helped me, but it has opened me up at least to the fact that there's different states of consciousness. That's what it helps you. It helps you to experience different states of consciousness. And it helps you understand, at least, that you're not your thoughts and your emotions, but that you're something beyond that. Because indeed, it helps you to dissolve more easily. and to access these other states of consciousness.
Similarly to what Bart said, here's Floris again, core contributor of Gaianet, saying how psychedelics changed his perception of reality.
Discovering psychedelics really blew my mind. It was like the first thing that really changed my mind and really changed my perspective on reality. And I couldn't explain it, like naturally I'm really skeptical and scientifically minded. So I really dive into the topics I'm interested in. And this was just one of those magic fields that I just couldn't explain. So I kind of just kept going back into it and trying to figure out what was going on, try to explain it away with neuropsychology, etc.
And I think now it's time to go back to Alexander's fourth milestone moment and let him continue that story.
Finally, the fourth big personal development switch happened when I had my first ayahuasca ceremony. I saw ayahuasca come up in the distance over years, let's say. I started to hear about it, hear people talk about it, and my mind was slowly getting convinced that even though it feels scary or different, or I have judgments against mind-altering or expanding substances, I saw there's a deeper level of purity, and it is safe, and people, like almost everyone who knows about it, is super, super positive about it. So I realized again, it's only my mind that's in the way. And when I got the first invitation and I attended the ceremony, magical things happened. I connected with myself in an entirely new way. I healed a couple of old injuries, like physical things in my body. And I call it a meeting with my higher self.
I will conclude this section on psychedelic plant medicine with Alexander's comment when I asked him his thoughts on what role ayahuasca played in his spiritual journey.
Ayahuasca, I hadn't even linked it to spirituality necessarily. For me, it was really, well, in Dutch we say geestverruimende middelen, so it expands the mind. Well, to me that sounds like a good thing. The mind is the prison in which we live, so if we can expand it, there's more space.
Before the conclusion of this second part of the feature about Gaianet, there is one more topic to cover. So far we've talked about the background, the personal journey of the people behind Gaianet, and also their spiritual awakening, and in some of them how plant medicine helped them into it. Throughout my conversations with all of the people behind Gaianet, and also when I interact in the online platform of Gaianet, there is a phrase that is being used, and that phrase is living from the heart. It is a very beautiful phrase, but what does it mean? We will hear from Bart, Dan and Alexander telling us what does living from the heart mean.
In our heart, that's where we are connected to ourselves, and that's also the place where we can truly connect with others. This is also the place where this deep knowing that we are one resides, at least for me. When I look at what comes from my heart, it's just pure beauty. The mind can come up with all kinds of other things that are demeaning to others or judging or bringing you stories of fear or all these kind of things. But when I listen to my heart, it's pure. That's the place where my love comes from and where I can radiate that love.
My limited understanding of what this means, because it's still a great mystery to me, is that there is wisdom and intelligence throughout our whole body. Even your little toe has wisdom. There is consciousness. There is actually brain cells inside your heart. So your heart has brain intelligence. The same as in your gut, in your digestive system. There's a lot of neurons in there that send information to the brain and back when you are confronted with things in your reality. And I think it's about listening to your body intelligence. I think that's a more easily understandable term than listen to your heart or follow your heart. But it's important to bring in the whole body when we are in relationship to somebody else and when we are working and creating together. And to speak out what we feel. And then to identify together as a group what that actually means. Is that a fear coming from a program, from a belief? Or is that something we are sensing, which is a weird term, but we are sense-making together as we are expressing what we are feeling also. And there, I think that's like listen to your heart, is listen to your feelings. Not just to the mind and the logic and all of that. And I think the most important thing we found with Gaianet, we're not going to get there with our mind. And we're thinking about these things. We're only getting forward when we listen to what we feel. And that's beyond the mind.
Again, this is pure science. Everything is energy and vibration. The images we see and the things we feel, they are an illusion created by our brain. And so our ability to find our best path through space and time is about our ability to communicate and understand with the energy and vibration around us. The heart has an electromagnetic field that is 5,000 times stronger than the brain's. And the heart also carries a brain inside. So again, lots of science. Find HeartMath as an institute, HeartMath Institute. Amazing research. Again, science, metrics, devices. Shows how the heart is way more intelligent than the brain in ways that the brain cannot comprehend. So there's again the catch-22, being willing to let go of your mind, your limiting beliefs, and opening up to the idea that the heart knows and understands more. What it comes down to for me personally is that I trained my mind to understand that my heart is in charge. So when I'm facing choice, then one of my first intuitions is to ask myself, what do I feel? What does my body say? My heart, but also my bodily intuition. And so understanding that where we are in life is the result of our choices and starting to put our heart in charge of those choices instead of our mind, for me, that's the core of what this is really about, living by the heart and trusting that whatever happens from there is beautiful and right in so many ways that you cannot comprehend yet. But it's the heart that's in charge when you choose.
This concludes the second part of the feature about Gaianet. In the third and last episode, we will delve deep into Gaianet's mission, vision, future, and most importantly, what we can do right now.
You have this quote that says that the secret of change is to focus all your attention not on fighting the old, but on creating the new. And I think this is really true. This is really true. And this is so important to realize that in order to create something new, it doesn't help to fight the old. The only way to really create something new is to dream up this new reality and then focus your attention on bringing it into existence. And I think in the end, it's so simple. I think it really is so simple that we all have to shift our attention towards that which we really wish to create, towards the world we really wish to live in.
And so if we dare to start dreaming, and I think that is really the first step, start allowing ourselves back to dream of a better world. Allow ourselves to fantasize about it. How would I feel in a completely different world?
And the more people have experiences with their true self, with their, I would say, indestructible part, with their infinite, that part of consciousness that is alive within them, and they know and they experience through direct experience, not through a guru or a book or a reading, but actually experiencing this sense of oneness. Yeah, that's the end of individualism and consumerism and materialism. That is recognizing that all of this around us is alive, and all of this is vibrating and resonating with each other.
To get involved, go to Gaianet.earth.